Welcome to the Deep Dive. We all want to get to the heart of things right, to understand a topic deeply without wading through a sea of information. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Today we're focusing on something pretty essential, something that touches basically everything we do, from huge projects at work to learning a new skill, even things like improving your English. Today it's all about productivity.
You got it. And you know what's really interesting is, and we see this all the time in the material we looked at, it's not just about working harder or longer. No. It's about understanding how you can be strategic with your time, with your energy, and with all the resources that you have. How to reach your goals more effectively by working smarter. You know, we've got some really insightful pieces here that really break it all down.
I think that's a great point. So we've gone through tons of articles and research, and we've pulled out the most valuable stuff for you. We're going to be talking about those obstacles, those common obstacles that get in the way of our best intentions, right? Like how to set goals that really push you forward, effective ways to manage time, but even like how much your energy levels and the way you communicate, how much impact that has on your productivity. Plus, we'll get into how technology can be a real asset if you use it right. And we can't forget about avoiding that dreaded burnout. Now, for those of you who want to get fluent in English, we'll talk about how all of these productivity principles can actually help you on your language learning journey. So let's dive in. What are some of the first things that trip us up when we're trying to be more productive?
Well, a big one, and it's something that I think everyone can relate to, and this was highlighted in so many of the studies, is procrastination. It's that thing we do when we put off tasks, even though deep down we know it's not helping us at all. And, you know, it's fascinating. The research suggests it's often because we're scared of not being perfect, you know, or feeling like a task is just so overwhelming we don't even know where to begin, or just feeling completely overloaded in general.
Yeah, that feeling of like the to-do list just hanging over you. I think everyone's been there.
Yeah.
So what can we do? What are some strategies to actually just get started when that feeling hits, when you feel that resistance?
Well, one thing that comes up again and again is breaking those big, daunting tasks down, making them into smaller, more manageable steps. Because right away, the whole thing feels less scary. And then actually scheduling blocks of time, you know, even if it's just like 15 or 20 minutes to work on those smaller parts, that can really build momentum. There was this one article, it was in the Journal of Organizational Behavior, and it said that just starting something, often that's all it takes to trigger a whole cascade of progress.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's kind of like, you know, when you're facing a huge project, just focusing on that first little action, that can be enough to get things moving.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that feel huge, time, right? Time management. That's another area where I think so many of us struggle. We just never feel like we have enough hours in the day.
It's a common struggle for sure. A lot of people, they find it really hard to use their time effectively. And, you know, several of the articles that we looked at said this is because of all the distractions that we deal with every single day. Emails, you know, social media notifications popping up all the time, and just all these different things that just pull our attention in different directions. The key, according to research, is becoming aware of where your time is actually going.
So how can you do that? Like, what are some actual steps you can take,
Yeah.
you know, based on what we found, to take back control of your time?
So there are a few key strategies that came up over and over. One of the most basic ones is just creating a daily to-do list, or, you know, using a planner. That way you can actually see visually everything you have to do. And then going through and prioritizing, you know, figuring out what absolutely needs to get done, what deadlines are the most important. And remember, we talked about procrastination. Well, techniques like the Pomodoro technique, where you really focus hard for about 25 minutes and then take short breaks, that can make a huge difference. It can help with concentration. It can stop you from feeling so pressured all the time. In fact, one study showed that people who use these time boxing techniques, they actually felt less overwhelmed.
Yeah, the Pomodoro technique, I love that. That whole cycle of focused work, and then just a quick little break for your brain. It seems almost too easy, but those little pauses really do help, you know, to reset and stay focused when you're working on something for a long time. Now, you mentioned distractions before. Those things, digital or real world, that pull us away from what we're trying to do. What are some ways to minimize those distractions? What strategies can we build?
The sources we looked at, they emphasized having a dedicated workspace, a place where you can minimize interruptions. So that might mean finding a quiet spot, cleaning off your desk, and just letting people around you know that you need some time to focus. And then when it comes to the digital stuff, turning off notifications on your phone and your computer, the ones that aren't absolutely necessary, that's really important. But it's not always external stuff, right? Sometimes our own thoughts can distract us. And so doing mindfulness exercises, even something as simple as taking a couple deep breaths to bring your attention back to what you're doing, that can be surprisingly effective. And there's a lot of research that backs that up. Research on how to regulate your attention.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're creating an environment both externally and internally to help you focus. That's key. Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges, the things that get in our way. But what about setting ourselves up for success in the first place? By setting clear goals, goals that actually work.
And that's where the SMART goal framework comes in. I mean, every single one of the things we looked at highlighted how valuable this is. Instead of just having these vague ideas, like, I want to learn English better, you got to be specific. You got to make your goals SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And what's cool is that this structured approach, it gives you an actual roadmap, a way to track your progress.
Can you give us a concrete example? Like, how can someone use the SMART framework, especially if they're trying to improve their English?
Sure. So let's take that vague goal, I want to improve my English. A SMART goal would be something like, I will practice speaking English for 30 minutes every single day for the next 3 months. So it's specific, right? It's conversation practice. It's measurable.
Yeah.
30 minutes. It's achievable. You can realistically commit to that every day. It's relevant. It directly helps you improve your English. And it's time-bound. You're doing it for 3 months. See how much clearer that is? It's way more actionable.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It's like putting a specific destination in your GPS instead of just like generally heading north.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you've got these well-defined goals. You've made them SMART. Now what? How does that translate into being more productive in your daily life?
Having clear goals, it gives you a sense of direction, right? That's essential. They help you prioritize things effectively. You can distinguish between tasks that actually get you closer to your goals and those that are just keeping you busy, but not really contributing to anything. And when you know exactly what you're working towards, it becomes way easier to take those big goals and break them down into smaller, more manageable steps. Plus, reviewing your goals regularly, that keeps you motivated. It keeps you accountable. If you feel yourself drifting, going back to those goals, it can help you get back on track.
Right. So it's not just something you do once and forget about. It's a process. You keep checking in and making adjustments as you go. Now, we mentioned the Pomodoro technique earlier as a way to deal with procrastination and manage time better. What are some other good time management strategies that you found in the research?
So we talked about Pomodoro, which uses those focused intervals and short breaks to help you concentrate and not get mentally exhausted.
Right.
Another really good technique is time blocking. That's where you actually schedule specific blocks of time in your day for different tasks. So you're allocating time slots for everything. And this helps because you don't have to spend so much mental energy deciding what to work on next. It makes your workflow more structured. And then there's this other powerful tool that came up a lot. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix.
The Eisenhower Matrix. Okay, for people who might not be familiar with that, what is it?
It's basically a way to categorize tasks. You do it based on two things: how urgent they are and how important they are. So it divides your to-do list into 4 categories. You've got things that are both important and urgent. Those are your top priorities. You do them right away. Then there's things that are important but not urgent, so you can schedule those for later. And then things that are not important but are urgent, you try to delegate those if you can. And lastly, things that are neither important nor urgent, you just try to eliminate those completely. What's great about this is that it forces you to really look at how you're spending your time and energy. It helps you to focus on things that really align with your goals.
Yeah, I like that. It's about being really strategic and not getting bogged down in those tasks that don't really move you forward. But we all know that willpower can only take us so far. So how do habits play into all this?
Habits are fundamental, absolutely. Productive habits, I mean. They're essential for being effective in a sustainable way. Because when actions become habits, you don't have to think about them so much, right? They become automatic. And that frees up mental energy for more demanding tasks. And one of the cornerstones of managing your time and energy well is establishing a consistent daily routine.
Can you give an example of how building habits could help someone who's learning English?
Yeah, definitely. Imagine if instead of trying to cram in these long study sessions every now and then, you make it a habit to study English at a specific time every day. Whether it's learning new vocabulary, practicing grammar, or having conversations,
Yeah.
it's so much more effective to be consistent. And there's this really cool technique, it's talked about a lot in behavioral psychology research, called habit stacking.
Habit stacking. That's a new one. What's that all about?
So basically, you take a new habit you want to create and you attach it to a habit you already have, something you do regularly. Like, let's say you make coffee every morning. You could make it a new habit to review like 5 new English words while your coffee is brewing. By linking it to an existing routine, it's more likely to stick. And then another helpful thing is to track your progress. Maybe using a habit tracker or a journal gives you visual feedback and it can really keep you motivated.
It's a smart way to use those routines you already have to build new, more productive behaviors. But okay, so you've got those good routines in place. What about that initial push, that drive to actually get started? How can people boost their focus and motivation, especially when it starts to dip?
Well, focus and progress, they go hand in hand. And motivation is the fuel, it's what drives you to take action. We talked about minimizing distractions, but things like mindfulness practices, like short meditations or deep breathing, those can help a lot with your ability to concentrate. And, like we were talking about with goal setting, breaking down big tasks into smaller, more achievable steps, that can create a sense of accomplishment. And that in itself can fuel your motivation.
Yeah, I like that. It's like climbing a set of stairs. Every step you finish, it gives you that little boost to keep going to the next one. But what about those times when your motivation just tanks? What can you do then?
Celebrating those little wins along the way, that's crucial. Acknowledging your progress, even if it seems small, it reinforces that positive behavior. And, sometimes you just got to start, even if you don't feel like it. Motivation often follows action. Once you get going, you might find that you get more into it, that momentum builds.
So true. Sometimes the hardest part is just overcoming that initial inertia, right? Just getting started. But, we talked a lot about managing our time and mental energy. What about the physical side of things?
Yeah.
How do our energy levels, like our overall energy, affect how productive we are?
That's such a good point, and it's something that people really underestimate. You can have the best time management systems in the world, but if you're constantly drained, it's going to affect your productivity. Getting enough sleep, that's like the foundation. It's so important for mental clarity and focus. And then there's nutrition. Eating a balanced diet, that helps keep your energy levels stable. But relying on sugary snacks, that can lead to those energy crashes that just totally mess up your workflow.
So it's not just about how we use our time, but how we fuel our bodies and minds as well. What are some other things we can do, based on the research, to keep our energy up throughout the day?
Being physically active regularly, even if it's just short bursts of exercise, that can give you a lot of energy. And then taking breaks throughout the day, it's essential. Step away from your work, stretch, take a walk, or just clear your head. That can actually help you focus better when you come back, and it can prevent that mid-afternoon slump. And there's research on circadian rhythms that suggests that if you can, try to align your work schedule with your natural energy peaks. That can make a huge difference in your productivity.
It's about working with your natural rhythms, not against them. Trying to push through exhaustion, that's never a good idea. Now let's talk a little bit about how we interact with other people. How does good communication contribute to being more productive?
Clear and efficient communication, it saves so much time. And it helps prevent misunderstandings both at work and in your personal life. And for people who are learning English, having strong communication skills, it opens up so many doors. for collaboration, for learning, for accessing information. What's interesting is that when communication isn't clear, that's when you get wasted time, duplicated effort, and frustration.
So, based on the stuff we've looked at, what are some specific things people can do to communicate better to boost their productivity?
The most important thing is to use clear and concise language. Avoid jargon, and unnecessary complexity. Be direct and to the point. Like instead of sending a long, confusing email, just ask a clear question. You're much more likely to get the information you need quickly that way. In written communication, using bullet points and headings can make it easier for the other person to understand what you're saying. And finally, active listening. Really paying attention to what the other person is saying, that can prevent misunderstandings. You'll be less likely to need clarification later on.
It's about being respectful of other people's time, and that ends up saving you time too. Now, I can't believe we haven't mentioned technology yet, right? It's everywhere. So how can we use it to our advantage? How can we use technology to be more productive without getting totally sucked into all the distractions?
Yeah, technology can be a powerful tool, but you have to use it intentionally. Task management apps, those are great. They can help you organize your to-do lists, set deadlines, and see how you're doing. Calendar apps, those are essential for scheduling, for time blocking, for setting reminders. And then there are automation tools. These can take care of those repetitive, time-consuming things that you have to do so you can free up time for more important work.
Automation. That sounds pretty cool.
Yep.
Can you give an example? Like, how could someone use automation to be more productive?
Sure. You could use it to automatically save email attachments to a specific folder, maybe a project folder in the cloud. Or you could schedule social media posts in advance so you don't have to do it manually every time. The key is to find those tasks that you do all the time that take up your time and see if technology can help you do them more efficiently. But here's the thing. You have to be careful about distractions. Turn off those notifications that aren't important. Otherwise, technology can become more of a hindrance than a help.
It's like you got to be in control of the technology, not the other way around. Okay, we've covered a lot, but there's one more super important thing we have to talk about. Sustainability. How do you avoid burnout? Hitting that wall where you're just completely exhausted.
Burnout, it's a real problem, and it can really affect your productivity in the long run. It's basically a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion that happens when you're stressed out for too long. So it's super important to have a good balance between your work life and your personal life. You need to make time for relaxation, for your hobbies, for connecting with friends and family, and you need to be realistic about what you can do. Don't take on too much, and learn to say no sometimes. That's key for protecting your energy.
It's not about pushing yourself to the limit all the time. It's about finding a pace you can maintain. What are some other things people can do, based on what we've learned, to avoid burnout?
Like we said before, those regular breaks throughout the day, those are important. They let your mind rest and recharge. And then prioritizing self-care, making sure you get enough sleep, eating healthy foods, exercising, and managing your stress. All that stuff forms the foundation for long-term well-being and productivity. Remember, pushing yourself to the point of burnout, that's counterproductive in the end.
Great reminder. Productivity is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Now, for all of our listeners who are working on becoming fluent in English, how do all of these productivity principles apply to your journey?
English fluency, it can really make a difference in your productivity, especially in today's world. You get access to so many resources, all those online learning platforms, the latest research, everything. It helps you network, build relationships with people from all over the world. And for English learners specifically, using these productivity strategies in your studies, it can really help you learn faster and more efficiently.
Could you use some examples of how English learners can do that?
Definitely. Setting those SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. For your language learning, like learning 10 new words a day, or practicing speaking English for 20 minutes 3 times a week, that creates a sense of momentum. And as you get more fluent, you can even start to multitask, like listening to podcasts or audiobooks in English while you're commuting or exercising. In the end, becoming fluent in English, it's like having a valuable tool. It helps you access information, communicate effectively, and stay organized in a globalized world. And all of that contributes to greater productivity overall.
So it's not just about learning English for the sake of learning English, but seeing how it can make you more productive in different areas of your life. That's a great connection.
Yeah, exactly. And to sum it all up, the main message here is that productivity is a skill. It's something you can learn and get better at. It's about being strategic with your time and energy, building those good habits, and having a positive, focused mindset. We've gone over so much today, from SMART goals and time management techniques to the importance of energy levels, staying focused, communicating well, and avoiding burnout. And for those of you learning English, remember that mastering the language itself, that can really boost your productivity in a global setting.
And as you start using these strategies, be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Set realistic goals. Find a pace that you can sustain and give yourself credit for the progress you make. Productivity isn't about being perfect. It's about growing and improving over time.
And on that note, I want you to think about this. What if you just consistently implemented one or two of these techniques? How much could your productivity increase in the next few weeks, the next few months? What's a small action you can take today that could lead to big results over time?
That's a great question. I think we all need to reflect on that. And with that, here's to working smarter, reaching your goals, and making the most of the time you have. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.